Okay, I can start. And did you want me to do a land acknowledgement as well, or do you want to jump in with that, Charity, or someone?
I can start. I can just say that it's, again, Jackie from UBC. I just want to really acknowledge, thank you, Roberta, and thank you, Priya, that we are joining all today, working, living, playing on the traditional and ancestral unceded territory of the Coast Salish peoples, which includes the Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish nations, Musqueam, as well as in Okanagan, for those of you joining from Okanagan, the Silks people. And I know SFU has additional territories. Priya, I think that I will leave it over to you to acknowledge the territories of SFU.
Sure, I would do that. I am currently in Vancouver, so I would have to do a different land acknowledgement. So just bear with me. Yeah, I am currently placed in Vancouver, so I respectfully acknowledge the unceded traditional territories, including Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Musqueam nations on which the SFU Vancouver campus is located. So I just wanted to start off the session. Yeah, thank you, Jackie, for chiming in there. I would let Dr. Roberta, start with her introduction. So maybe, you can probably introduce to us by telling and providing a little bit more detail about your career, your current position, and what you like about your current work.
Okay, so I am past retirement age, so my career has been long, and it's meant that I've had time to do a lot of really interesting projects. I'm a graduate of both UBC and SFU, so I really feel like I'm in with my people today. I'm a counselor by profession, was originally trained as a special ed teacher, and also a career development professional. And most of my career has been in the field or the sector of career development, which touches people at various points in their life. People are making career decisions while they're in schools, while they're in university. We've got people from the Career Center here today, in the workplace as they're developing their careers. I've done a lot of work with displaced people and workers that have been laid off, with new immigrants, with people returning to the workforce in a rehab capacity after an illness or injury. So career really touches a lot of different points. I also have an academic side of my life and have been working in the university system as an instructor and associate dean, director of a counselor and training center and testing center. And so I have had that opportunity to sort of bridge worlds. My own company, Life Strategies, was incorporated 30 years ago. We just celebrated our anniversary recently. And in that company, we do a lot of training, direct training and course development, but also research and writing. And so I'm currently juggling multiple writing projects, all with very tight deadlines. And for those of you that think consulting brings you freedom, think again. But what I love about my job is the variety. I've never been bored, and I've been in the sector for over 40 years. I like that I can move in a given day from one-to-one counseling or coaching to instructing to training to facilitation to research to writing, doing some consulting, supervising, admin, and it can have that variety within a day or a week or a month, and that's really kept me interested. I think what has inspired me in my work is making a difference and trying to leave the world a better place. And so I was really touched at our anniversary celebration when my staff got me a little plaque that says, you won't be able to see it because it's clear glass, but 30 years leaving a better world, one interaction at a time. That fits for a lot of us in consulting or interested in consulting, that we have many, many interactions with a wide variety of people, but each one of those touches people, and it's like a ripple in the pond. It spreads out and really can change the world. So thanks for that.
Thank you. Stephen McMurray can go next.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much for having me on this panel. And I think I'm maybe not at the polar opposite end as of my career as Roberta is, but I'm definitely new into my career. And also like Roberta is, I also have an undergraduate from SFU and my master's is in kinesiology. And it's funny now because I got my these two degrees that have nothing to do with each other, and at least on paper, and they actually coincide really well with each other. And so my master's in kinesiology, I focused on coaching science and leadership. But now my career choice is I do business operations and service delivery for information technologies with the BC Public Service. And so I'm calling in from Victoria today on Lekwungen speaking territory. My pronouns are he and him. And I currently work in the division. And if you don't understand anything with the government, that is great, because I don't think anyone I work with understands it either, because it's just this like giant conglomerate. I think I work with like 30,000 people. I think there's 2,000 people that work in the Ministry of Health. And so they broke it down by divisions. And so the division that I work in is the Health Sector Information Analysis and Reporting Division, which essentially means we deal with health data, which I think in the world of data is what everyone really seems to think is the coolest of data. And the data sets are very large. I don't deal with the data sets, which is great because I like micro data, not macro data. And actually, the role that I am in now as a health information consultant is a brand new role for myself. And for the previous almost 2 years, I was a business intelligence analyst. And so health information consulting is something that I'm learning very rapidly. And I've worked with these consultants as well. And ultimately, as I am just connecting with stakeholders and updating a new website that houses this division's metadata for all of its data housing on the health data. And this includes like indicators of data sets, subject matter experts, data holdings, many other data related items. If I knew more, I would tell you so much more, but I've only really been doing it for a week. And so, but I can tell you so many other things. Before that, as this business intelligence analyst, it was working with the Ministry of Health has just been like getting to know everybody and all of the key players. And I've got a friend who works down on the 3rd floor and they see Dr. Bonnie Henry. I've never seen Dr. Bonnie Henry. And so it just is like, you know, it's a very large, wild place. And before I worked for the Ministry of Health, I was trying to pursue a career in amateur sport in Canada. And so I was working for Rowing Canada Avrion, which is the national sport organization. I was trying to do administrative work there in developing sport development for not high performance athletes, but for everybody else. And it just, I guess maybe I can be honest, is it's hard to live in Victoria working for nonprofits. And you know, you kind of want to make a little bit more money. And that's a decision that I've made. And there are some days where I absolutely love the job that I do. And there's some days that I really don't love the job that I do. And I do remember the passion of working in nonprofit really helped me through those days that I didn't enjoy the work a little bit more. And I miss that a little bit. Happy hour is nice to pay for though. So it's like kind of a give and take on some of those things. And that's a really nice privilege that I've been able to get for that and giving up a little bit of my passion. And before that, I gave up another passion, which was coaching. And I was a competitive swim coach before that. And I have found my way back into coaching through some private lessons and working with people in that way. And so I suppose, provide coaching consultants to individuals in that way. And I just to answer the last question here was what inspires me about my current work is I really like utilizing technologies to enhance program delivery and whatever those programs are. And I've constantly thought about how my master's degree taught me to think objectively and remove the subjectiveness. And I find that making decisions is significantly easier when it's an objective truth as opposed to my subjective opinion of it. And like working in health is, even though I don't know how to be a doctor or a clinical practitioner or a policy analyst for some of these health programs, is working with the data products that I have worked with enables the people that are the subject matter experts to make those decisions. And I just want to make sure that the decisions that I'm making and the information that I'm providing them with is the accurate. And I think that that's kind of the inspiration that I find in my current work.
Thank you, Stephen. Yeah, and then we will move on to Dr. Mohammadi.
Thanks, Priya. You can call me Elnaz. Hello, everyone. This is Elnaz. I wanted to talk a bit about my background. I lived, studied, and worked in 3 different countries. I'm from Iran. I did my bachelor in Iran in chemical engineering and worked for a few years in oil and gas industry in Iran, which is the main industry in that area. Then I moved to the US for my master's degree and started a PhD program. And then I decided to come to Canada, which I call home now. It's my home now. And I did my PhD at UBC in chemical engineering, and currently working as a water treatment engineer at WSP Canada, which is an international giant company with 50,000 employees around the world. We have almost offices in every country that you can call, which is great. My background, like scientific background, was also diverse, similar to the countries that I worked or studied at. I started as a general chemical engineer, work in oil and gas. Then I moved to the US, and I was studying in Boston. The field of the studies in that area, there are so many universities, and they're mostly focused on healthcare. So I got involved with drug delivery and tissue engineering projects, which is completely different from what I do now. That was my master's topic. And then I worked for a few months on a PhD program, which was electrochemical detection of contaminants in body. And then I learned that my passion was truly environmental engineering. So I came to Canada, to UBC, to continue a research field in environmental engineering. My research focus at UBC, I was very lucky, and I was very fortunate to work on a very practical research topic, which is highly in demand here in BC and in most of the Canada. And I can talk about that later to address some of the questions when people are deciding to go to do a PhD or not, go with a master's to industry. It all depends on the topic of the research that you choose, and I can expand on that later. But what inspires me about my work day to day is that the reason that I changed career from healthcare back to environmental. I am truly passionate about environmental engineering, and I enjoy that I see every day that my knowledge is being applied to have more sustainable practices. I work with many mining companies, and me and my colleagues help them to treat their water and protect the environment and do not leave like a contaminated site behind. We have different departments in our company. I am in the water treatment team, and I enjoy that we work with those mining companies to get the work done. Another aspect that inspires me about my job is that I get to be involved with many different people, from public to regulators, different stakeholders, the mining company itself, and you get to see many different perspectives and personalities, which I really enjoy. Yeah, I pass it back to Priya, and then we can answer questions after a few minutes.
Sure, thanks, Elnaz. Yeah, so I guess you'd have seen some messages from me and Jackie in the text box saying, you guys can all submit your questions at the Q&A at the bottom, or you can also unmute yourself to ask. But just to get us kick-started with the session, I'm happy to get started to ask our panelists some questions which were pre-submitted. The first question is, are there different aspects of consulting for research or nonprofit contrasted with consulting for business? And whoever feels comfortable first from our panelists, please jump in to answer the question.
Well, I'm happy to comment on that. I think that's maybe an artificial dichotomy. I think that there are differences in consulting according to the role that an organization might need you to play. So a nonprofit organization may call on a consultant for business consulting purposes. I think that if you're setting out on your own as a consultant, then in the nonprofit sector, there's probably more typically a dependence on grants and on writing proposals and on trying to generate funding that way. Where if you're a business consultant, you probably are being hired by an organization to meet some kind of a business need, such as Elnaz described. But certainly when I was working in an organization that was going through a merger and downsizing and outsourcing and all of that, then there were a variety of consultants hired by that organization, and so they were being paid as business consultants. But I'm not sure that we can give a straightforward answer to the question as it was phrased. Stephen, you've done both. Oh, and Elnaz.
Sorry, Elnaz.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I have two mute buttons, one on microphone and one on the computer itself. So I totally agree with what you're saying, Roberta. I just wanted to add that I can't comment on nonprofit consulting because I haven't had that experience. But in business consulting, I see that there is 3 pillars that runs the business, and most of the companies, big corporates, care about, and those are scope, schedule, and budget. That's what they run the business based on, and it's all about providing the scope to the client with highest quality and the cheapest price that brings in the best profit for the company. I think on the nonprofit side of things, there are other values or other parameters that are involved that we don't see those parameters or those decision criteria in business consulting that much.
A really good point. And so I'll just jump back in, because one of the things that early in our business we ran into trouble with is we were very used to working on tight budgets. My business was self-funded. And so we often lost out on proposals and bids because people didn't think that we could pull off the project for the budget that we quoted. So it's not always the lowest price, but it's really understanding your sector, and within the business world, absolutely ensuring that you stick to a budget or as closely as possible. Unexpected things happen, but it's much more of a focus than, say, in the academic world, where you might get a SHIRK grant or some kind of a large grant. I'm working on a research project that's quite comparable to one of my husband's research projects. He's a tenured prof. I'm an entrepreneur, and the budget for those projects is considerably different, but the outcome and the publications will be very, very similar. And so I think probably even a bigger leap between academic, sort of consulting and research within the academic world, or where there's funded projects, because the goal there is learning. And so we recognize it's going to take time, and they want a number of students to have opportunities to work on a project, where in business, if they're hiring you as a consultant, they're hiring you as an expert in some area, and they expect you to be able to work really efficiently within that expertise and save them a whole pile of time and money. That's the point of having a consultant.
Thank you.
I could add a little bit to the nonprofit side of things, just because I've worked in a number of them, and I've been on the board for a nonprofit here in Victoria, and their mission and vision is really what drives them. And although there is not like a large profit motive behind it, they are absolutely trying to break even at the highest amount possible. And so just because it says nonprofit doesn't necessarily mean that they're not trying to make money, because every dollar that they make is every dollar that they need to spend. And some nonprofits spend a lot of money, but that means they brought in a lot of money as well, because they're just not allowed to run deficits or negatives. And so and then what Roberta just said about cleaning it up quickly and efficiently, that's what they're looking for.
Perfect. Thank you so much. We do have a question in the chat from Hardeep, which is, I would like to ask how to get started in the consulting career path as a new graduate.
Well, I'm the oldest graduate here, but I'm a career person, so I'm happy to jump in with that. I think the key to consulting is expertise. So if anyone is hiring a consultant, it's because you have a niche area of knowledge or competency that other people don't have, that are going to allow them to quickly and efficiently solve a problem or get something done. And so as you are transitioning into consulting, think carefully about the research that you're doing in university. When I graduated several decades ago now, I did my research on displaced workers only because the term was unfamiliar to me. I'd been working in the field for almost 20 years, but I'd never heard that term, displaced workers. And my project officer in a nonprofit, so the government funder, had said, save some space in your program for displaced workers. And I thought, I don't get the difference between them and other unemployed people. And so that's what I did my research on. And graduating in the 90s, that was a license to print money, because that was the heyday of downsizing and mergers and acquisitions. And so people were getting laid off, after 25, 30-year careers. And I was the only person that had done any research recently in Canada on displaced workers. So I think that if your ultimate goal is consulting, try to figure out what problem people are working to solve right now, like really follow the trends. And I sort of stumbled into that by accident, but immediately upon graduation was hired by a large corporation, and also by the university. And it was, a lot of us have that imposter syndrome when we start out as consultants, and it carries through your whole career. But I remember being introduced at this huge corporation, as we're so lucky to have Roberta on our team, because she's with the Faculty of Business at SFU. And I thought, oh my gosh, but I haven't even started there yet. And then when I went to SFU, they said, we're so lucky to have Roberta on our team in the Faculty of Business, because she's a consultant with this huge organization down the street. And I thought, yeah, for 3 weeks. And so what happens is your credibility is often established by those early projects that you have. And that's what you'll become known by. So I, without, completely serendipitously, without any plan, I ended up growing my career academically and growing my career as a consultant concurrently rather than sequentially. And that really, really was a pivot point for my career.
I can add a little bit of information about myself, and I totally agree with Roberta. The topic of the research that you do at the university is what it determines, it determines your next steps. If you're working on a purely theoretic research that doesn't necessarily have application in consulting, it's really hard to get in consulting. But if there is always ways to make your research applicable. You can plan for pivoting or applying or adding some scopes to your research to make it applicable to the intended industry that you're going to work in the future. And that doesn't happen in the last few months of your studies when you're doing your master or when you're doing your PhD. You need to plan ahead of time. And that was one of the things that some of us are just lucky that our research topics are very applicable. I was one of those people because my research was on a contaminant of concern that is like one of the biggest concerns here in BC. But I knew that I wanted to go to industry. I knew that I wanted to go to consulting. So I started taking courses in other departments like business school. The business school at UBC, Sauder, has this program that you partner with a group of people from different disciplines, like from business school, from science, and from engineering. And you work on a project from zero to having a prototype for that project. I attended that course and I learned a lot. That changed my mindset from being a pure academic person who was in the lab from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. just working on my own research. That gave me perspective to think about the business side of things as well. So it's the topic of the research that you do and making it practical for the intended industry that you want to attend in the future after your graduation. I think it's very important.
So I'm just going to ask Elnaz, is that the SCMP program you were talking about?
It is
Strategy Consulting Mentorship Program?
No, it is the program that was, I attended that program as part of the EcoScope program. I got this funding for my PhD that is part of an entrepreneurship program that I forgot the name of the course, but it was based on applications. You wouldn't just register for the course. You had to apply for the course and you had to get approved. You had to have like an idea for a business and then group with some other people, like 6 to 8 people, and then bring that idea into a prototype. I can get you the name of the course, but that course helped me a lot with just taking me out of the comfort zone of just being a pure academic scientific person to having the idea of business, what it takes to be a good business person, although you have the knowledge. Because it's not just the knowledge that you need, it's how you present your knowledge, how you can talk about what you know. I think one of the things that we all need is to kind of show off our skills that some of us are very shy, but that doesn't work for going into the industry. You need to be confident and you need to be able to present your knowledge in a very confident way. And that's what I learned in that business course. At the beginning, I was very quiet. I was the only PhD student or PhD candidate at that time. Most of my group were business students, and I was amazed with how much they were able to, like, I brought in the scientific idea. We worked on an idea that we would use bacteria to produce flavors. That happens in the science. It was my background in chemical engineering. I worked with bacteria. There are such bacteria, but they taught me how to basically exaggerate the idea. It's an existing idea, but how you present it to these investors. And at the end of that course, we had like 3 or 4 actual investors from industry who would evaluate our work. And the way my teammates were presenting that work was very convincing. The idea came from me, but the way they were presenting it was very convincing for me myself. So I learned that kind of like that aspect of like it changed my personality a bit, I would say. And I think these are complementary. The knowledge and the personality to be in industry, to be a good business person, they're complementary.
Yeah, that actually, I wanted to throw in, because I come at things from a very different perspective. My master's was in kinesiology, and I wrote my major topic was on addressing dropout in sport. And I took this role at Rowing Canada Avrion and was trying to implement that. And it's really hard when you're at an entry-level position or a lower level position and you are trying to implement systemic change to everything, and you want to be that consultant, you want to be the person who makes those decisions, and you need to do all of this work just to prove your point, to change something. And for me, I found that at least what I wanted to do wasn't going to get done that way. And so then I transitioned careers over here to the Ministry of Health now. And in order for me to make that transition, I really had to focus on my soft skills of like, what are my client relationships? What's my stakeholder engagement or partnership building, on however you want to use those terms. And also like, what type of service delivery can you provide if you end up going that way? Like what soft skills do you have? And there's a lot of people that I work in my division, and they all have PhDs in chemistry or biology. And then they are doing health human resource data stats. They're doing surgical wait time statistics or analysis and stuff. And so it's very outside of what they had originally studied, but their soft skills of research development or knowing how to code. My product manager for a website that houses health data, Power BI reports and health data, his PhD is in chemistry, but while he was doing his PhD in chemistry, he learned how to code Python. And now he is a product owner, which is a wonderful career path for him. And I think early on, it's kind of hard to like know exactly what it is. At least it was for me, because it's like I wanted to be a swim coach consultant. And now that's just kind of a different path that I've chosen. And how do you navigate yourself through that? I thought I would just add that in just in case there's people out there that are like, I actually don't know what I want to do with my life, because I still have no idea what I want to do, but here I am doing it. So sometimes you just kind of end up you jump into the river and see where it goes.
Yeah, I think the question from Hardeep definitely, got a lot of interest between our participants. So I think everyone was very curious to know which course that was from you, Elnaz. And I think there's a few descriptions in the chat box. So I think maybe, and then probably Connie has confirmed at the end. So just, I don't know, maybe you can probably confirm looking into the chat box, which was the program that you went into.
Yeah,
so
to be clear, the EcoScope is the Answer Create that was the actual graduate program, but I think it was the Lean Launchpad from E at UBC that you were referring to.
Yeah. While we were talking, I knew that this question would come up, so I looked for the link. It's Tech Entrepreneurship. I put the link in the chat. I wanted to remind everyone that was for the period that I was there. There was this EcoScope funding. This course was part of that EcoScope program, but I think the EcoScope program is now discontinued, and that was not for all discipline. It was just for microbiology, but this business course is a general one. It applies to all disciplines, all departments. You can apply to it. It's kind of competitive, but if you have a good idea, they will take you.
Perfect. I think it probably answered Hardeep's question of like, can new graduates also participate, and is it only restricted to UBC students? I'm hoping not, and I guess it's open to everyone.
I am not sure about that, but I know that you had to be registered. I don't think you could attend as a new graduate. What I wanted to mention that when I was doing a PhD, when we do a PhD, like I had a very hard experimental work with biological bacteria, there was a lot of challenges that I was dealing with. And at time, this course was feeling like a burden on me. Just again, because I didn't have that perspective of those soft skills that Stephen was mentioning or referring to. I only thought it changed my mindset. The reason was I only thought that I'm producing or I'm being efficient if I'm producing like data. If I'm just taking data, taking samples in the lab, I'm producing data. I didn't quite appreciate the fact that these soft skills, communication skills, are as important. But I think I just introduced this course just because I learned a lot from that course, but there are similar courses. I mean, if if you find it's not open to everyone, or if you find it's competitive to get to because there is like limited spots, don't be demotivated. There are other courses. There's like online learnings that you can learn all those soft skills. Yeah, so it's about the mindset. We can learn that mindset from other resources too. That's what I wanted to emphasize.
I think building on what you said, Elnaz, just very briefly about the practicality. When you're in university, obviously, especially at a PhD or a postdoc level, you've got to create information and theory and that kind of stuff. But if you can concurrently be working on a project that has a practical application, so that might even be community service work. It might be taking on a project as an intern. It might be taking on a project for a friend. But what you want is some practical application, and making the dissemination of your research, making it as practical as possible. So you can do that through conference presentations. You can do it through developing workshops or webinars or courses, having a blog. There's so many ways of doing very practical things, and that's what industry is going to be interested in. But you can't not do your academic work, and that's what you were saying in the course. It felt a little bit like a waste of time because you had this other pressure to perform academically.
Perfect. We have another question. This is directed to Stephen from Ziba. The question is, what does your typical workday look like as a health information consultant?
Oh, it's so pointed. What does a typical workday look like? I remember I told somebody one time that I wanted to work in a cubicle, and they thought I was crazy. So I'm sitting in a cubicle because I'm in my office right now, although I don't have an office because it's a cubicle. Typical workday is it's a lot of meetings, and it's a lot of troubleshooting what we're doing. And so this website that I'm currently working on now houses the metadata for health information in the Ministry of Health. And I need to become a subject matter expert on this metadata. And I need to become a subject matter expert on all of the people who are the actual subject matter experts on each of those things. So in health data, there's these indicators or these metrics that can be implemented into a data holding. And so if you're taking a look at a data set that has 50 million rows of data and 13,000 columns, because it just keeps going. I don't know if they have that many columns. I might be exaggerating that, but we do have one data set here. I think it was like the drug report had, I think it was 5 billion rows of data in it or something like that. And so you can have these absolutely massive things. And there's somebody out there who's a subject matter expert for it. And there's somebody who's a subject matter expert for the metrics that are used to calculate out exactly what it is that you want to take a look at. And so I need to be in a meeting with that subject matter expert to figure out from them what is going to go on this website that I am the technical lead for. And then I have to become the expert for that website in how to get that information in there. But where the tricky part in my job arises is that and I think people who have work experience in different areas this might make a bit more sense to them, but people who have different interests have like different personality traits. And so like finance people, they're very straightforward and it's very black and white for them. And health data people, they're kind of quirky because they just want the data to be good and they really care about the math. And the user experience side of that is a little bit different for them. And so I can have this really long conversation about these indicators with this individual, and then I have to be able to make that make sense to somebody who is not an indicator nerd. And I have to make it make sense to you or whoever is in this session so that they can understand what this indicator is and how to utilize it if they want to go and do their own research with it. So I guess that's kind of what my typical day is. And then, I don't know, there's a lot of drama because it's client relations and you're dealing with a lot of different personalities. And I am a joker. I like to try to poke fun at a lot of things. I really liked when I was growing up, my mom watched a lot of soap operas, so I try to like make connections that everything here is just kind of a soap opera, because there's just a lot of drama that goes on, and you're just dealing with a variety of personalities in that. And I think that maybe that describes a typical day here for me. Just trying to kind of piece together what this person over here wants versus what this person over here needs to know, and then how to get this person to talk through my website to this person over here. I think that that's a good way to explain it.
Thank you, Stephen. So yeah, I think I can probably ask some of the question now, the pre-submitted question. So in what areas of consulting do you foresee an increase in demand? Which areas, if any, are becoming obsolete?
Well, probably I can talk about engineering consultant and what I see is growing. Well, we all know there is a lot of emphasis on sustainability and green technologies. And I do see that there is already a lot of restrictions on industry. So in engineering consulting, I think one of the areas that will continue to grow will be environmental consulting and development of green practices. And a buzz term that we all hear a lot is being future ready. That's one of the focuses of engineering consulting nowadays. Another one that I see a lot of talks and a lot of discussions about is building an infrastructure, because of the aging buildings that we have, and also trying to make energy efficient infrastructure, and also transportation. Those are the areas that there is definitely going to be more growth in the future in engineering consulting.
Thank you,
Go ahead,
Elnaz.
Stephen.
Oh, okay. Here in the health data world, there's a lot of different things that are happening with it. I'm trying to think of the phrase. It just evaded my mind. It's there's the sharing of data is new, and it's wild and it's crazy, and a lot of people are really wanting to get in on the sharing of data that's out there. And we had a conversation. So the team that I'm on originally for that past year and a half role that I had, they were doing the COVID daily stats for Bonnie Henry. And I joined the team right after they did that. And there's one piece of me that kind of wishes I'd been here for it, just because that was such pivotal work. But there's another piece of me where I'm so glad that I wasn't working those like 80-hour work weeks of getting that data for those people. And we had a big debrief about it about 6 months after that left our team, and how everybody wants data, because during the pandemic, in those early days of the pandemic, that data was used daily to make daily decisions that impacted everything. And now data transparency and that word almost came back to me, but yeah, just the sharing of the data. I think that that's a really big thing. And then I think if you take a look at automation as well, is one of the things that we are trying to do here is use Power BI to allow people to drill into data and like see data points across. So I mentioned the drug atlas, that 5 billion row report that we were talking about. You can take a look at that at like really low level data, and you can take a look at like, okay, well, what people in what community are taking what drugs at what age, and what drugs are they taking for what diseases, for what conditions, et cetera, et cetera. What happens if you don't need a Power BI report to do that, and you can just type it in and say, hey, produce me a report on XYZ on this data, and then it gives it to you. So that's probably the future of where data analytics is going to go, is you just ask a question and it produces a result for you, as opposed to you submit a request and then somebody spends months creating it for you. I think that's kind of where that might be going.
I'll pick up on that, Stephen. It's a perfect segue, because I think going forward, it's the people skills that we've been talking about that really will be valued. And so much of, what used to be complex calculations that did take months or even years will be done more and more by AI. So, we've sort of, as academics, been under the radar for a while, and as long as we're using our brain, we're going to be fine, and technology isn't going to take our jobs. But AI has really changed that game. And so there will always be work for people like Stephen and Elnaz, who are doing the translation, the knowledge translation and knowledge dissemination, and being able to collaborate and partner, and being able to, speak technical language in one conversation and then translate that into language that other people can understand somewhere else. So I posted in the chat and in the Q&A a link to the new essential skills. It's called Skills for Success. It's for all Canadians. It's not specific to consulting, but you'll see things in there like adaptability and creativity and innovation and flexibility, and then the whole communication, writing and speaking, collaborating, all of those skills that really are unique to humanity are the skills that, partnered with your knowledge, are going to keep you employed in the future.
Thanks, Roberta. I think that's very important, especially in the age and time of ChatGPT. I think I really liked how you pointed out, the originality and like the need of Stephen or Elnaz's work. So yeah, thank you. So yeah, I think I can ask the next question, which is why and how consulting how did it grow into such a big phenomena that all companies look for consultants, and also the future growth?
Maybe I can speak to the historical part, and then you can speak to the current part. Why it became mainstream is it aligns completely with the trend of just-in-time hiring. So employers have stopped sort of stocking their larders, with people, and having people on hand for a job that may come up. And they've in the recent decade or so have really focused on who do we need right now. And so that's the beauty of hiring consultants, is that you bring in someone who, in some cases you're in employment positions, the two of you, but other consultants might work for a consulting firm, and somebody is brought in for specific projects. And so that way people are getting exactly the expertise they need for a short period of time. Sometimes if you're working independently as a consultant with no benefits, no holiday pay, but good hourly pay. And so it is exactly aligned to the gig economy and to employers in general, even in large organizations, really streamlining their workforce and making sure they've got the expertise they need for right now.
I can probably add a bit to that. Well, as Roberta mentioned, this is bringing in the specific expertise that's needed, which brings in cost effectiveness. The companies, like the industry companies that I'm working with, they can't have all those expertise in-house because it will be a lot more cost for them than just hiring consulting companies that have the expertise and providing that knowledge to them for those specific problems that they have in hand and help them solve those problems. One other thing that I would say that consultants can provide for these companies, and the companies themselves cannot do that, is the objective ideas. Because if you're the person that's dealing with that problem, you can't be objective about how to solve the problem. While when you are from the outside looking at the problem with several sets of minds and eyes and minds, it's different. And that brings in credibility for the solutions that you're offering, especially when they are dealing with regulators. If they bring in a design, again, I'm talking about the engineering consultant. If the company brings in a design for like a water treatment system that they want to install on their site to remove some contaminants, most of the time the regulators ask them for a third-party analysis of that water treatment system, just because they want to make sure that it has been reviewed with some objective ideas. which I think that's one of the reasons why the consulting companies are doing so good right now, because they are hired with different companies to bring that review aspect of their work.
Perfect. Thank you to our panelists. And then since I don't see any questions in the chat, I'm just taking the freedom to, to speak out some of the pre-submitted questions. There was a question saying, as a consultant doing medical writing for a mental health startup, do I need to get insurance?
My answer to everything like that would be, it depends. Even I would always encourage you to speak to a lawyer. I'd encourage you to speak to professional associations that you may belong to. Some of my contracts require additional insurance, actually require that I name the particular company I'm consulting with on my insurance. So I have to go back to my insurance company and add a rider for that. And so and early in starting my business, we spoke with a lawyer and he said, the work you're doing, nobody's going to sue you. And if they do, just pay them out. So he didn't think that I needed insurance. Because I'm a counselor, I do need professional liability insurance. So I have that. And then I have some general liability insurance for my business. But the real question about insurance is, can you pay out any of the claims that might come against you? And if you have any concerns about that, get yourself insured. Because even if you have an incorporated company, sometimes the belief with an incorporated company is they can only go after the assets of that company. But anyone with any brains and legal advice is also going to go after the principal of the company. And so then what that does is opens up any claim to not just Life Strategies and whatever happens to be in Life Strategies in my case, but also against my personal assets and my family assets. So when you're thinking about insurance, insurance is always there for if something goes wrong. And so you just have to think about, if something goes wrong, what are the consequences of that? And can you afford those consequences?
Thank you, Roberta. I think then we'll move on to the next question. I see a question in the chat as well, where it is, I wonder if you need credentials to start consulting, or just your academic credential is often enough?
I can toss in a little bit in there. Is I think it's both. I think the academic credentials will show that you have the base knowledge, and then I think as you like, the academic world is a very different world than the business world. And when I worked in nonprofit, that's a different world from working in government. And working in government is going to be different than working in a large corporation that is mainly driven by profit motive or only driven by profit motive. And so I think if you're going to be providing any type of knowledge transfer, consulting in that way, is you need to be a expert in that. And for me, like, to go do some consulting work for a major for-profit business is I don't think I could do that, because I don't have any experience doing that. But for nonprofits, absolutely, I could do that because of the experience. And so I think that the work experience, for my experience, I've said experience a lot, but in my experience, is that most people are looking for people that have a little bit more than just that academic knowledge, but that's also at the master's level. I think at the PhD level, it might be a little bit different. So maybe the others who can speak to what it's like in that world, because I do know that while you do your PhD, that you're involved in it for such a longer period of time at such a more in-depth level, that the experience that you gain might be a little bit different.
In my field, which is more of a helping profession, in some ways, my my PhD did more harm than good in moving into consulting, because there was a real fear that I would come in and be too academic. And so I had to ensure people that I had that practical expertise, and I had, more than 15 years of experience in the field before I got my degrees and my advanced degrees, and then could bring those two pieces together. So I think it's not always that more academic work stands you in good stead as a consultant in business, especially. They really, even a lot of business profs in the Faculty of Business don't have a PhD. They come in under special contracts to be teaching in an MBA program or something like that. So I think the key is to have the credibility and the very specific knowledge that we've been talking about in whatever concept you're selling as a consultant. But also I wanted to emphasize the importance of collaboration that has been mentioned a little bit already. And I have learned way more by working on projects with other consultants or by partnering with people to put in a proposal. Like even at a very practical business level, you now are talking about what your fees are. You're talking about what your overhead is and how you structure that. So any opportunity you get to partner with somebody else in submitting proposals is going to be an amazing step into consulting for you and a really good learning experience.
What I would like to add to both answers, which I think they were great. I think the question was, is academic knowledge enough, or do we need to have other certificates to go to consulting? I would say by attending graduate programs or getting a university degree, we learn a lot of soft skills that definitely help with consulting. It's just not the scientific knowledge that we get from university. When you're handling your project, a master's project or a PhD project, you learn project management skills. You need to finish that project within 2 years or within 5 years, hopefully for a PhD program. And then you have to meet your budget. You have to plan your next steps. You have to communicate with your supervisor. You have to provide reports. So there is a lot of things that we learn and adapt from the graduate degree program that we are at in consulting. And it's not just the scientific knowledge that we bring in. So I would like to say that, or emphasize that we need to, I think I was one of the people at UBC who would attend absolutely every workshop that graduates and postdoctoral studies was offering. I know Jackie from there. I know Daniel from there. I know Connie from there. I took a lot of advantage of those workshops, just because when we focus on just developing our project, we don't necessarily learn all those skills. The G+PS, which I think I'm sure there are like comparables at SFU, they were great for developing those skills. I highly recommend you guys to find that time and attend those workshops. I remember that I was working with Daniel. I booked time with Daniel. I worked on my CV. I worked on my cover letter. I want to make sure that you guys or you girls take advantage of those resources that are available. Those are all the things that we get from university, from our graduate degree, not just the degree or the scientific degree that we have.
Thank you, Roberta and Elnaz. There's another question in the Q&A, which is, as an international student in the renewable energy space, how can you break into the MBB consulting firms? I'm hoping, yeah. Was that a difficult one for all our panelists? Maybe, yeah, that could be something our panelists can chime in a little later. I'm not sure.
I don't want to guess at what MBB is.
Yeah, that's where even I am guessing.
Yeah,
that's why I was like, I think, and then I stopped. I'm hoping it's molecular biology and biochemistry, if I'm not wrong, but I could be wrong for this space. So that is me speaking as a scientist, so I don't know.
I just Googled it, and it's the big three: McKinsey and Company, BCG, which is Boston Consulting Group, and then Bain and Company. So the
There
big
you
three.
go. It's definitely wrong.
Yeah.
It's okay. We can
Again, I'll
move
go
on.
back to my experience in career counseling. When I first graduated, it was the big five at that point. But I spoke with many of them, and they were usually looking at hiring people to do, in my field, it was, obviously more the human side of it, but to facilitate something that was kind of a canned program across the country. So I think the entry point would often be to be part of a team, or to be an analyst, as Stephen has described, and having the flexibility to move or to travel. One consultant that I knew early in her career had 3 apartments and 3 sets of clothing in those apartments, and lived in Vancouver, flew to California for Monday to Wednesday at dinner time, flew to Texas, I believe, was there for Thursday and Friday, and then flew home for the weekend. And so that's not a lifestyle that suits a lot of people. But when you're working for a big multinational firm as an entry point in your consulting career, you're going to be sent to where the work needs you. And so those big firms are global, and you may be needed on a project for a week or a month or a year in specific locations. And I think the more flexibility you have, as well as the expertise that they're looking for and the people skills that have been emphasized already. But I know the people that I knew in consulting spent a lot of time on planes.
Thank you, Roberta. So the next question is, how difficult is it to bid as a sole prop business with the provincial and municipal governments? In the bracket, it says an environmental consultant, UBC IRIS alumni here with years of experience with multilateral banks and foreign governments.
I guess maybe I'm the only one that's had to do that, but I again would say it really depends on the project. Sometimes all they're looking for is an individual, which is what a sole proprietorship would be, to work on a very small project, and it might be good and you wouldn't have an overhead and could be quite competitive. For larger projects, some of the government projects that I'm aware of require partnerships, and you have to go in with a group of other people. And so I think it really depends. Look carefully at the request for proposal, and do some informational interviewing. Talk to people who have been successful in getting those kinds of projects. When I first worked as a sole proprietorship, all that means is that you don't have an incorporated company. So you're the same person. I'm the same person with Life Strategies. There's really no additional security because my company is incorporated. So there's no difference between Roberta Borgen applying for something and Life Strategies applying for something. If it's a project that only needs me, if it's a project that needs to bring in other people, then I probably have more credibility doing that through my company because I've got the infrastructure for hiring people and reporting out and all of the accounting infrastructure and everything there.
Thank you. I think maybe there is probably a follow-up question which can go along with that, which is, when you start out, do you recommend sole propriety or incorporated as business model for consulting?
Again, I may be the one on the team that's done that, but I started out as a sole proprietor with really tiny little businesses. One of my businesses was making rice paper lampshades. And so, you don't need to incorporate a company. You don't ever need to incorporate a company, but it would really depend on the projects and the business that you're working on. What I did find when I incorporated my company was there was some perception of instant credibility. So it was much easier for me to set up accounts with suppliers and that kind of thing because it was a company rather than me trying to do it with an individual name. So I think when you're getting started, perhaps if you're testing the waters, or maybe you're going to take on 1 or 2 projects while you're still applying for full-time work, you're just trying to build up your CV, then probably doing it as a sole proprietor makes a lot of sense. As if you're intending that you're going to grow your business and eventually hire other people, it's not that you can't hire them as a sole proprietor, but you may want to put the infrastructure in place. The only thing I would mention is GST, because GST, you don't have to charge if you don't have a large annual income, but it kicks in regardless of when in the year you hit that magic number. So I haven't looked it up lately because I've charged GST for years, but I think it's $30,000. It used to be that. It may have changed, but whatever that number is, I hit mid my fiscal year, and it was really hard to then have to go back to clients, corporate and individual, and say, well, now I'm charging you GST when I wasn't last week, because it felt to them that I had increased my fees by X percent, rather than, you know, they knew that if they were a business, it's going to be flow through, that they will write off that additional money, but it had that perception of increasing the fees. So if you are going to go into business and you think that you're going to exceed whatever that magic number is, I would recommend, and it's certainly possible to do this, to register for GST upfront and start charging it right from the beginning, even though you don't have to.
Thank you. So Louis says, my accountant recommends to start a sole prop network and partner with bigger incorporated businesses. And then once you grow your business, then you can incorporate if you make more than 30,000 Canadian, even with foreign clients. You need to get a business and the GST number, charge GST, and file taxes as a sole prop business.
Yeah, I think that's good information, and always why it's important to get legal advice as you're setting up. But even now, like having been in business for 30 years, I still learn by partnering with other organizations and obviously share information, and they learn from me. But I think that collaboration is a really wonderful way of extending your expertise.
Perfect. Thank you. And then I think we'll just, I'll just try to drive this in a different direction in terms of, you know, resources or experiences. Like, how can graduate students and postdocs get engaged in this sector? Any events or volunteer activities, professional societies that is available to them where they can, you know, that you guys would recommend, so that they can, you know, get more experience or a flavor for what they would like to do.
Yeah, I think I think if you get into volunteering, it's a great way to get really good work experience, but you're not working, and that's the real truth of it. Is how, like, if you go to UBC, SFU, or UVic, or, you know, we're in pretty much the most expensive place in the world, or one of them, right? And it's also the most beautiful place in the world. So, like, do I want to move to Winnipeg? No. Is it cheaper to live there? Yes, but I'm not moving to Winnipeg. And I remember, I don't, I'm like getting to that age now where I'm like, back in my day, they had unpaid internships, but that's the truth of it, is that those are illegal now, because when you do work, you do want to get paid, and it's hard to pay rent when you're not making money. But at the same time, is if you do have a job and then you have a career goal that you're working towards, is doing volunteer work can enhance your career path dramatically. There's this one woman that I work with who is younger than I am. So I think she's in her young 30s, and she's a director, and she's been a director level for quite a few years. And it's because she was able to take in a lower level position that afforded her a really good work-life balance, go do some volunteering work. She became, I think, the chair or the president of some nonprofit, did that for 4 or 5 years, or maybe it was 6 years, and then was able to leverage that into her career path and then combine it with her job. And then she jumped up through the ladder really quickly. And now she has this wonderful title. And that's one option of the way that you can do it. And then the path that I've taken is I just came in low in a large organization, and I'm just going to work my way up to it. And I think that there's a lot of different options that you can do on that. But I would have to say that it's the volunteering definitely can help leverage that. It just is, how do you pay rent if you're just volunteering?
Well, I think I can add to what Stefan is saying, and I do agree. Starting at a low level, as I see a lot of co-op students, like the students that are still in their bachelor degree. They take 1 or 2 semesters off from the school. They come work with us. They learn consulting and they go back. And we often hire them back when they are done. Like they can come back after a year when they finish school. There is such an option for graduate students as well. So I think a good way of getting into the business is to do internships or co-ops if possible before finishing the school. The reason for that, or even like early in your program, the reason for that is that it's going to determine the path you want to take after your graduation. Because if you want to go to academia, you just need to focus on publishing your data, publishing your work. If you want to go to industry or consulting, you need to develop those other skills. So it's better to know earlier than leaving it for the last year or last semester of your studies. So I think co-op is a very good way of getting into the industry. What I personally utilized a lot was that before finishing, before finishing my PhD, while I was in the last year, I started connecting with people on LinkedIn. I would send them personal messages talking about my project, where my project is, and I would tell them that I want to have like an informational interview with them. And you will be amazed how welcoming people are, especially senior people in those big companies, because they have the passion of hiring good minds. And if you are like graduating in a few months from such a great university such as UBC or SFU, they want to hire you. They don't know where you are, so go ahead and introduce yourself. I made a lot of connections through LinkedIn, and I applied to many jobs, like just filling out applications where they were posted on Indeed or on LinkedIn. I never got one single interview from filling out those applications. But I would tell you that I got 3 job offers before I finished my PhD through connecting with people directly. And that was very effective for me. So I highly recommend utilizing LinkedIn and also attending events, like events that are relevant to your work. I know that UBC, I was at Chibi, there are so many industry nights that they have, different departments. Feel free to attend those. Feel free to have your resume printed and hand it out and talk to people. I think those personal level connections are a lot more valuable than just filling out applications and waiting for response. At least in my experience, that was a lot more effective.
I just really want to reinforce that for you. Probably, when I'm working with postdocs and professionals, the thing that people are most reluctant to do and is absolutely essential to do is informational interviewing. And so whether you make those initial contacts through LinkedIn, or I would really recommend professional associations, and not just attending, but that's where volunteering really can pay off. If you can sit at the registration desk and connect faces with name tags and have that chance to momentarily chat with people as they're looking for their name tags, or even better, if you can be a speaker at those events, and now people are looking to you for your expertise, and you do have expertise, you've got recent research. So it's those kinds of personal connections, as Elnaz said, that are going to open up the door for you, but try to be visible. So just going to an event and handing out business cards, like I hardly even carry business cards anymore. Nobody wants business cards. It's handy to have them, but that's not networking, that's not connecting, but actually being visible, doing some volunteer work, serving on the board of an organization, an association. That's where you're going to meet the other leaders, and they're going to recognize your name.
I would have to add for the informational interview is because I've transitioned careers a couple times, and I'm not that old, and it's a serious challenge to do. And informational interviews are a really great way to find out if that's actually where you want to go, or if that's the organization that you want to work for. And I think some of the best advice that was ever given to me is the interview is an opportunity for you to also interview them and to find out if that place is actually where you want to work. And as much as it might be like a passion draw for you to go work for that company, perhaps their HR policies don't align with what your values are, or perhaps they don't offer work-life balance. And the only other thing that I was going to add to that is also try to take a look at, well, it's different now because it's post-pandemic with hybrid work, but where's the job market that you want to work in? And if you need to move cities to do that, well, you might not have to now because of remote work, but taking that into consideration as well is where are the jobs that you want to pursue, and then where are those organizations that you want to work with.
No, that was perfect to hear from you all, because that was a direction that I wanted to drive it, to ask about the networking sites. So Elnaz, thank you so much for driving it in that direction, and that really helped. So yes, because we are pretty close to the time, so I would just take the last few minutes to ask our panelists for their final words of wisdom, or calls to action to the participants to say what is it that they would like to give to this diverse group of audience.
Well, my words link so closely to what we were just talking about. I think I'll jump in with that, because I really wanted to emphasize the importance of establishing and maintaining your network, and nurturing your network, caring for your network. And that doesn't mean just constantly reaching out when you need something, but finding out what they need and sending them up to date, articles that you come across. It's that exchange that can continue internationally. So I have a meeting tonight with a member of my network that's in Australia. I've got meetings with people in Pakistan and Dubai and just all over the world. So focus on your network. Focus on keeping your skills current while you're in university. That's obvious. You're doing it. That's what's going to be of value to the organizations you go to. The senior people that are anxious to talk to you, it's because they haven't been in school for a while and they want to know what's new in the field. But it's going to be really important for your whole career for you to keep those skills current. I mentioned visibility and credibility, and that can fade really quickly. And so, if you attend a number of conferences while you're, doing your PhD or your postdoc, and then you stop attending conferences, people stop thinking about you. And, being active, being out and about in the community is what generates consulting work. So it's when and COVID really shut a lot of things down, right? So I connected with people on Zoom, but it was very, very different to be physically on site in Toronto or London or, Cape Town, and to connect with someone, and it prompts their thinking, and projects are born out of that. So be visible, and don't just attend conferences. People don't know who's attending the conference. They know who's presenting, and even better, who's keynoting, and you've got the academic knowledge to be keynote speakers. And so work on that skill. And then think as well about where you're publishing, because academically, if you want to advance academically, you're going to need to publish in the top tier journals, but that's not going to get you anywhere in business. It'll give you established foundation of credibility for people that understand the difference, but not for many. So concurrently find ways to get your data published, and then you can cite that data, but create infographics and do workshops and webinars and those kinds of things that you can post to on your LinkedIn account, and people can see you in action. So really balance that theoretical and academic stuff that you have to do with the practical stuff and the visibility that will get you the work. media interviews are great too. You know, people will notice that you spoke on CBC, where they won't notice that you did a presentation to the Engineering Association, unless they happen to attend that.
So true. Thanks, Roberta. Elnaz and Stephen, do you guys want to chime in?
Sure. Well, I think it's just a summary of what we have already discussed. I can talk about my personal experience. Focus on developing soft skills. Don't just focus on being in the lab. Often when you're, especially in a PhD program, we are not spending enough time on those other skills. I would say start networking early. Don't leave it for the last year of your program. Start reaching out, start presenting, as Roberta was saying. Connect with people as early as possible, because the longer you know them, the better relationship you have with them. So when you are reaching out for work, it's not just like you message them and you're asking for a job. It doesn't look that good. So build that relationship before reaching out with requests, as Roberta was saying. And then I want to again emphasize utilizing the G+PS resources that are available at UBC, and I see in the links that there are comparable courses and resources available at SFU. Attend those workshops. You learn a lot. It's not just like side activity. It's part of that growth that you need to be successful. There are some one-on-one consulting with G+PS advisors. Take advantages of those and build your resume and cover letter with their guidance. What I would like to also mention is that cure your resume, or like improve or change your resume and your cover letter for the job that you're applying to. I often see a resume that's way too general, and those are normally the resumes that no one reviews, because if you are saying that you know everything in your resume, it means you basically don't know anything in details. Focus on your work and basically try to use those keywords in the job posting. I had different resumes, different cover letters for each job that I was applying to. So that's also important. And then, yeah, I think that's it. And it's stay positive, stay positive. You will get jobs. You're graduating from great universities in one of the greatest cities. So stay positive, be hopeful, apply, don't get tired. Yeah, that's it for me.
Thank you.
Oh, I have so many things to. It's hard to. I don't know. Like job applications always they make me irrationally mad. I hate every single step of it. I utilize the resources at both SFU and UBC in job applications, and all the advice they gave me was absolutely wonderful advice, but it did not help me with my irrationality of how much I just hate it. Work on it. It's a skill. And I think when I did finally get to the point where I realized that it was a skill, and that I can learn that skill, that was when I was able to move forward. And then I think with that mentality is just try to keep your eyes on like what your career goal is, and be open to the idea that it might shift. And if it does shift, pay attention to like what skills that you can apply in that shift from one to the next. I wanted to be a swim coach, and now I work in the Ministry of Health, and I want to be a leader here, and I want to take that leadership into something else. And I don't know what the career path for that is. And so I am setting up informational interviews to find out where those linkages are, so that I can figure out, well, what's the next set of skills that I need in order to do where it is that I want to go. And I think if you're able to map out what your next 1, 2, 3 steps are with a lofty goal beyond that, I think you'll eventually find your way into what it is that you want. the way that I did it before, though, was I just said, that's what I want, that's what I'm going for, and I just gung-ho went for it, and then I found that that's not actually what I wanted. And if you ever go through an identity crisis, it's an awful thing. And so it's like, I'm trying to avoid it now. And so I think I think for my advice is just find out what path you want to do, and then find out where you want to go, and then try to start carving out what that path looks like. That's what I would say.
Thank you.
Just
So
building on that really briefly, just remember that there's many paths to the same destination, right? So, you know, if you think about any hike that you go on, any lake that you might be aiming for, you could probably approach it from 3 or 4 different directions. So if one direction doesn't work, you know, it's okay to change gears. It's okay to move, and you may still end up at that same lofty goal that Stephen mentioned. And Elnaz talked about the importance of hope and you know, holding on to your positive thinking. In my doctoral research, optimism turned out to be the single best predictor of both career success and job satisfaction. So if you do nothing else but work on your optimism and your hope, it actually is a really good career building strategy.
okay, thank you. I would like to take this moment to thank our panelists, you know, Roberta, Stephen, and Elnaz. You guys have been amazing, and it's nice to see the diversity in your experience, where Roberta is talking about how she's been in the field for a while and how she is, like, you know, moved from, like, you know, in research and then into entrepreneurship. And it was great to hear from Stephen, who's recently started into health information consultant area, and, you know, great to hear from Elnaz, you know, with her experience in process engineering and industrial background. So I hope, you know, your questions did get answered for the session today. And if you have any questions, I'm sure you can definitely reach out to Jackie. And I guess the recorded session will be shared with you all as well, because I know there's been concerns about the links for different courses and stuff. So obviously that will be sent to you. So thank you so much to you all, you know, for patiently sharing your experiences with us, to our panelists. So thank you, panelists.
Thank you.
Thank you for hosting us.
Thank you very much. And I'd also like to give a round of applause to our wonderful moderator here today, Priya, postdoc at